Hi, I'm Jesse Gillis. This is the show, Now is the Time to Talk. This is the first episode in Merrimack TV. We're going to be talking about Defend the Guard with Tom Mannion, state rep out of Pelham.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
Thank you. Would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a state rep right now. I'm halfway through my second term. I plan on running again this fall. Hopefully the voters at Pelham will bring me back. Before that, I'm mostly a software engineer, but right out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps. So that's how my whole journey started, and I joined the Marine Corps because of 9/11. Deployed to Iraq twice. I was an infantryman, was along the Syrian border, did two tours there in my one enlistment, got out, went to the GI Bill, and now I'm doing software.
How long have you been doing software?
Oh man, since 2008, so however long that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that schedules nicely with?
It does. Because especially with like a lot of the remote work, especially after COVID and everything, like a lot of companies pivoted and allowed for remote work and stuff like that. I can work from the State House with my laptop. So whether I'm in committee hearings or if I'm sitting on the floor voting with the button, I can do it with the laptop in my lap.
Okay.
Yeah.
So today's episode, we're focusing on Defend the Guard. And to open this, I want to share something. This is from Kevin Tillman, veteran Iraq War, served with Pat Tillman that some may recall. I'm going to share what he wrote. Somehow we were sent to invade a nation because it was a direct threat to the American people, or to the world, or harbored terrorists, or was involved in 9/11, or received weapon grades uranium from Niger, or had mobile weapons lab, or WMDs, or had a need to be liberated, or we needed to establish a democracy, or stop an insurgency, or stop a civil war we created that can't be called a civil war even though it is. Somehow profiting from tragedy and horror is tolerated. Somehow the deaths of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people is tolerated. Somehow subversion of the Bill of Rights and Constitution is tolerated. Somehow torture is tolerated. Somehow reason is being discarded for faith, dogma, and nonsense. Somehow a narrative is more important than reality. Somehow being politically informed, diligent, and skeptical has been replaced by apathy through active ignorance. Somehow nobody is accountable for this. Have you ever heard this?
I've heard this, yes.
You've heard this from Kevin?
Yep.
Do you know a little bit their backstory?
I know about Pat Tillman. I didn't know. Is that his brother?
His brother served, I believe they were in the same unit.
Okay.
And it was revealed later that the Army had to eventually apologize to the family. A really nasty affair, and you can kind of get his sentiments of what was going on, or he feels what he was sent to do afterwards, the call to action after 9/11. And you had shared with the audience a little bit about your time serving.
Right. So, it's actually, I kind of want to say, like, that speech actually reminds me a lot of, like, Smedley Butler, who, like, when I was in the Marine Corps, they talked a lot about, like, the two-time Medal of Honor winner Smedley Butler from, like, earlier in the 20th century. He later left and then wrote War's a Racket, which was a small little novel about how he believes that when his time served with the Marine Corps, he was just a muscle for big banks and business and, the fruit cartels and things like that. And he would go down and beat up these Central American countries for the benefits of not the country itself, but a very small group of individuals. But they never told us that part when we were in the Marine Corps. They just talked about it as like a war hero, two-time Medal of Honor winner. I learned about his anti-war exploits after the fact. And that's kind of how I felt when I got out. Like when I was in the Marine Corps, I enlisted, of course, to go find bin Laden. The recruiter basically told me, this thing that's going on in Iraq right now, it'll be over. It's going to be like the Gulf War. It'll be, we're going to get in, we're going to find Saddam, it'll be over. You'll be back over in Afghanistan looking for bin Laden. Nobody knew at the time, except for the intelligence agencies, that bin Laden was already out of Afghanistan by like December 2001.
Yeah.
But we were all still thinking he's hiding in a cave somewhere. The Taliban's keeping him safe. But so that not only did the recruiter lie about, well, we're going to go find bin Laden in Afghanistan, then they were misinformed that this Iraq affair was going to be over and done in like the matter of months. So I enlisted to go find bin Laden. I wanted to go to Afghanistan, never had an opportunity. Ended up in Iraq twice, never really understood why. I didn't really, unlike a lot of people on the right, they bought in to the whole weapons of mass destruction thing. I was skeptical. I did grow up in like a Democrat house. So like I was constantly, it was all W. Bush, he's making up all this stuff, and I always knew that, and I feel it in my bones. We never found it. I was in one of the areas by the Syrian border, the Al-Qaim region, which is in Al-Anbar province, and I remember like one of our first ops was to go through this like phosphorus plant where they're like, oh, this is one of the places where they could be making weapons of mass destruction. And we brought the nuclear, biological, chemical teams with us, and they were supposed to like test this place and like look underground, see if there's anything suspicious. And I asked one of the nuclear guys, I was just like, have you guys found anything? And he laughed. He's like, we're not going to find anything here. And it's like, oh, okay. So that was like sobering, like, young, I think I was like 19 at the time. I was just like, oh, okay, so then why are we here? And then all the events that we saw, it's like we're clearing these towns, and the horrified looks of people on their faces as we kick in their doors, and we're doing like these massive clearing ops, like, over miles and miles of city. And it's just like the look of terror on these civilians' faces where it's like, well, we're supposed to be liberating them from the terror of Saddam, right? But they're scared of us too. They don't trust us, and they're afraid what's going to end up happening is like, we're coming in, we're going to ruin their lives, we're going to pull out, and Saddam or somebody similar is going to come into power and then just kill all these people if they cooperate with us. So it's like not only are we not looking out for the U.S. interests, we're not looking out for the Iraqi people's interests, like whose interests are we actually there for? And come to find out, it's probably the oil cartels or perhaps other regional powers in the Middle East that didn't want us to forget about them, so to speak. Like there's a lot of people that think Israel's behind the conflict in the Iraq War. I believe that some of it had to do with like the Cheney and George W. Bush, like the neocons. They just wanted us in the region. There was Wesley Clark had that list of he leaked that list of it was at 7 countries in 5 years, and Iraq was the number one domino that needed to fall, and then it'd be like Syria, Lebanon, etc. And they had to get it done to eventually culminate with Iran.
It's not for nothing at the time. Donald Rumsfeld, on one of his supposedly he liked to write notes, on September 12th, there was a memo of something related to Iraq. This is an opportunity. And that's come up several times through declassified information for the opportunity to go back into Iraq to finish what George Bush's father didn't finish.
Right.
The AUMF of the Gulf War to go, who was it, General Schwarzkopf?
Yeah.
And the higher-ups decided not to press into Iraq and topple Saddam at the time, and this was an opportunity to finish the job.
Yeah.
And they found their opportunity.
They did.
And they found an American public, even though supposedly it was the largest scale anti-war protest at the time. They found whatever sketchy intelligence to support WMDs, mobile weapons labs. There were falafel trucks. Weapons-grade uranium from Niger, liberating the people from a dictator, any which way, ties to 9/11, Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and it kind of just disappears now. And so we have this bill. I'm going to come to it, but I want to read something, what war is, because you were describing essentially occupational force, right? Terrorizing the populace. Who are we working for? What are we doing this for? At the same time while Afghanistan's happening. And it was something I wrote for, I'll have to come back to it if I don't have it. I thought I just had it. Oh, Veterans Day used to be known as Armistice Day. That was changed in 53 or 54. It changed to Veterans Day. And something about Armistice Day, what war does to people, what it does to people on the front line, what they bring home. And I'm just going to read what Herbert Hoover's address in 1929, because it was still, World War I was still pretty, I would say pretty deep in the memory, but no, it was still relevant. It had happened not 10 years before. Armistice Day is a reminder that as a nation, per each citizen, we have 2 obligations, duties to remember: assistance to those who suffered according to their need, and to the dead, to redeem their promise that their sacrifice would help bring peace to the world. And the emphasis there is it's peace. We want to seek peace because war is awful. In size of conflicts, it was rather small compared to the world wars, but still, to each and every individual that was there that served overseas. And so when he made these remarks, the State Department was an instrument for peace building. We need to further extend our treaties with other countries, providing methods for reference of controversies to conference, to inquiry as to the fast, or arbitration or judicial determination. Peace building.
Yeah.
That changes. It's Veterans Day, and it's hoorah. It's almost idolatrous worship of, you thank somebody for their service, but you don't question why you send them overseas.
And part of that, like another disheartening part of that is like, it then becomes, you can't question what we did. Otherwise it harms the memories of those who have fallen. It's like, well, how could you possibly question what you did in Iraq? Like you saw your squad leader, our point man die. And it's like, it's not, I'm not saying that man wasn't brave for saving our squad, but it's just like, why was he put in this situation in the first place? Why were any of us put there in the first place? That question, obviously is lodged at our leaders.
And you're told to keep your head down and do your job.
Exactly.
And then it's pressure all the way up to the top,
yes,
where you're not being paid to think.
Yeah.
And I have to remind that, I think it's Andrew Bakovich, one of his books, Colonel, retired Army, his son had died in Iraq, he served in Vietnam. But one of the quotes I pulled from him, and it sticks with me, the most patriotic thing you can do is to hold your government accountable. Loyalty to the highest ideals of the nation, not to the person who happens to be occupying the White House at the moment. True patriotism includes criticizing the government to make sure it's worthy of the nation's highest ideals. Without willingness to look critically at what the nation is doing, patriotism becomes little more than idolatry, a red, white, and blue version of the golden calf in the book of Exodus.
And that's also, to segue with that, the partisan flop where it ends up being like when Obama was in the White House, like everybody was quick to, even President Trump was quick to call him out on his drone strikes and murdering of Anwar al-Awlaki and other American citizens overseas by summary execution via drone. But then as soon as like the hat changes and you have a Republican in the White House, the same people that were just criticizing them are now defending the exact same actions. Or spinning it in such a way where it's like, well, it's different because, and it's like, it's really not. We're executing individuals without due process.
And that was the first U.S. citizen executed in a drone strike, right?
I believe so, yeah.
It was in Yemen. I think it was, yeah.
Yep.
And we swear, and the thing for allegiance, when we hold ourselves to the highest ideals, you swore an enlisted oath, right? I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yeah.
And to this, I want to segue to Defend the Guard. What is Defend the Guard, if you want to share with us?
Absolutely. So Defend the Guard is like a multi-state effort. It's been filed in over 30 states. The purpose here is that we are trying to hold Congress to account. They have not formally declared war pursuant to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, Clause 11 of the United States Constitution since 1942, when they did like Romania and all those other Axis powers, the smaller ones. They have not done that we're at 80-something years now, and instead opted for these authorizations for use of military force, which came out of the Vietnam War. Before the Vietnam War, that entire war was operated under the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution that basically gave infinite power to the president to decide where we're going to fight and how we're going to fight. And
who's Article 2? Like presidents?
Yes.
Yeah.
They have the authority to execute the wars, but Congress has the exclusive authority to declare the wars. If there isn't a vote of the Congress, we don't do it. Various Supreme Courts have ruled, of course, that should we become under attack, via an invasion or something, obviously the president has the power to respond, because at that point, a declaration of war is unnecessary because war is upon us. So to execute the war of defensively, say Canada were to invade, we don't need the Congress they should go through the process, but the president has every right to, in that moment, respond. And that has been, I think that went without questioning. But now we're at the point now where we're acting preemptively. The authorization, the War Powers Resolution, which gave birth to these authorizations of use of military force, actually it's pretty explicit. It says that, barring an invasion type attack on the United States, the president must always go to Congress. There's no provision in there that says we must act preemptively. There's nothing in there saying like we should strike first before we get struck. If that is going to happen, they have to get authorization from Congress first. And we've been flying under these things, these authorizations for 50-something years. And while we have those authorizations for use of military force, the presidents are still acting unilaterally in other ways, or they're expanding the definitions of these AUMFs. I had a resolution that went through my committee. We passed it unanimously, asking for the repeal of the 2001 AUMF, because that has been used as justification for anything that any president from the last, since 2001, 4 administrations, they just label anything a terrorist that they don't like, and they think that gives them justification to use military force. That's not true. The 2001 AUMF specifically outlines that it is Al-Qaeda and those responsible for 9/11 and those that harbored them. But yet it has been used in over 20-something countries around the world. So what we're trying to do with Defend the Guard is say that these AUMFs are not sufficient, especially the 2001 AUMF, but all this process is not sufficient where we just allow presidents to do it as they choose and then come to Congress after the fact and say, hey, you have to pay the bills for this. Here's a report. We're saying that if Congress will not make that vote for a declaration of war, we're not going to allow you to activate our militia, our National Guard, for overseas combat deployments. Now, I have to be clear, it doesn't stop anything to do with domestic deployments. It doesn't have to do with training. There's a Department of Defense versus Perpich, which was done in the late 80s, early 90s. It was a lawsuit saying that because Governor Perpich of Minnesota, I believe, refused to activate his guard for training in the, I want to say, Central America area. He refused to allow Title X activation. He lost that lawsuit, but the Supreme Court actually ruled that that ruling only pertained to training. It didn't pertain to overseas deployment for other purposes. And that's what we're trying to thread that needle. We're trying to take advantage of that ruling and say, all right, well, in Section 12301 under Title X, we have the authority to, as a state, our governor does, to not allow activation for Title X. And we will do it under the premise that it is unconstitutional what they're sending them to do. They didn't follow the constitutional process. We're not going to allow them to activate our boys and send them to Syria, Yemen, Somalia, wherever.
And the motivation for this is because the AUMF of 2001, has been used to go after whoever, wherever, anytime.
Yep.
And it just continues indefinitely.
Yes.
And the arguments, and I just listened to another, I'm just going through, it was just after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The House Foreign Affairs Committee had a hearing on the AUMF, and they weren't talking about whether or not to declare war. They're talking about whether at the time Biden administration, do they have to listen and give reports back to Congress about the AUMF? And it's like, all this is unconstitutional, but if nobody's being held to account, then there's no accountability.
And Congress is happy to cede that responsibility because the buck goes to the president, and they could just raise their hands and say, oh, it's not up to us. We're not to blame. Don't be mad at us. It's the president.
So you could say that I'm not really for this war, but you still sign the bill.
Yeah, exactly.
You still pass on the funding.
Yep.
But
Precisely.
you're not. I didn't vote for this because there was no war. To make the point, the AUMF, I could read it here.
Oh, yeah.
To authorize the use of the United States Armed Forces, this is 2001, this is a few days after 9/11, to go after Osama bin Laden and any of his allies that helped perpetrate 9/11. To authorize the use of United States Armed Forces against those responsible for recent attacks launched against the United States. Whereas, on September 11, 2001, acts of treacherous violence were committed against the United States and its citizens, and whereas such acts render it both necessary and appropriate that the United States exercise its right to self-defense and to protect United States citizens both at home and abroad, and whereas in light of the threat to national security and foreign policy of the United States posed by the grave acts of violence, and whereas such acts continue to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States, and whereas the President has the authority under the Constitution to take action to deter and prevent acts of international terrorism against the United States, now therefore be it. Yeah. And so today we are striking in, where are we striking? Somalia?
Yep. Somalia, Sudan, Syria, of course. We're not out of that at all. Yemen from time to time, and we're not even bombing Al-Qaeda in Yemen anymore. We're bombing their enemies, the Houthis.
No, we're going to come back to that too.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, those are the big ones, and then anything to do with the Caribbean. So, like, we're just drone striking random boats there, and they're saying they're narco-terrorists to expand the definition of terrorist. I want to say those whereas clauses are even more broad than where the actual be it resolved, and then it says what the president is actually empowered to do, and it says specifically to go after Al-Qaeda, the countries that harbored him. That's it. It doesn't mention just generic terrorism. It doesn't mention ISIS. It doesn't mention narco-terrorism, any abstract concepts like that. It is very specifically against Al-Qaeda and the countries that harbored them.
So it's whoever the State Department defines as a terrorist
Yes.
that could be threatening the United States, which is anybody, anywhere, at any time.
Well, that's what they do now. That's not what the 2001 AUMF text says.
No.
They just, it has been interpreted by every administration since that passed that they can just unilaterally label anything a terrorist and it's covered by that AUMF, when it is not. If you just take it, you read it. It's 5 paragraphs plus a resolution clause. It's not long.
And this was the justification for striking Iran last June.
Yes, it was.
Again, this is the 2001. At the time, we also pulled one out in 2002, AUMF for Iraq.
Specifically.
And there was, at the time, there was still the original Gulf War one that were finally repealed like a few years ago.
No, it was actually, those were repealed in December of 2025. It was just repealed. With the National Defense Authorization Act, they repealed those two. It took them that long to get rid of them.
And we had officially pulled out of Iraq, what?
Officially, we pulled out during the Obama administration. I think it was 2012.
Okay.
Then we had to go back to deal with ISIS, which was our mess that we left. So, I mean, I can give some of that timeline. So we had trained what they considered at the time moderate rebels. Those moderate rebels are HTS, which is Al-Qaeda. That is who's currently running Syria now. But a lot of those rebels broke off because they didn't like how tame these head-chopping lunatics were in Al-Qaeda, so they made it an even more aggressive group called ISIS. They merged over into Iraq, took a lot of the equipment and a lot of the people that we trained over there in Iraq, the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police, and they all formed this massive block. People wonder, it's like, where'd they get all this equipment? Where'd they get all these men? It's like, oh, that's people we trained when we were in Iraq. And they were also the people that we were training, moderate rebels with special forces in Syria. And these people just formed ISIS. So then we felt compelled, Obama felt compelled, that we had to go back and deal with this threat. The threat of ISIS was a threat to the Middle East. It wasn't a threat to the United States. But we felt obligated to go back. So we redeployed into Iraq. Their country did not necessarily want us there. We went back into the Al-Assad Air Base. We went to a lot of those bases that we had left to the Iraqis, took them back over, and then occupied them for another decade. We're still in the northern region up by, what's that town? I can't remember the name of the city, but it's like way up in the north near the Iraq. It's like between Turkey and Iran. We're still there, and their country does not want us in Iraq anymore. They don't want us there. And now that we repealed the 2001 or 2002 AUMF, we don't really have justification to be there anymore. But we're going to stay there for as long as we deem necessary. But the Syrian conflict actually had an AUMF filed in the Senate in 2013, 2014. It never passed out of committee. So they knew that they had to at least pretend to go through the process. And while it wasn't a formal declaration of war, Obama felt it was necessary to go to Congress and get them to do an AUMF to put boots on the ground in Syria, even though he had already had special forces on the ground in Syria training these moderate rebels. And it didn't pass. So then what they did is they kind of just justified the entire deployment of anything, any assets to the area under the 2002 AUMF, because at the time it was, we were helping Iraq, which was, you know, tangentially mentioned in the 2002 AUMF, even though that was specifically about the Saddam Hussein regime. Right. But it's like, oh, it's Iraq adjacent. So we use that as justification. But we never passed anything for Syria, ever. And now with the repeal of the 2002 AUMF, there's no justification whatsoever. And we're actually working counter the 2001 AUMF because the guy in charge of Syria now, Ahmed al-Sharaa, used to be Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, which is his previous name, was a head-chopping terrorist, bin Ladenite, that used to dig in place roadside bombs in Iraq when I was in Iraq. And he was captured and he was in one of the detainment camps. And then he left to go focus on his home country of Syria. He's now the head of state, and he is still affiliated with Al-Qaeda. The people that work for him are still technically Al-Qaeda.
He was, and for Veterans Day, was he not at the White House?
Yes, exactly.
So we were welcoming al-Nusra was the front.
Yes, yep. They went by many names. HTS, Al-Nusra Front. It's all Al-Qaeda.
He had a 10 million bounty on his head.
Yep.
FBI, you could have seen that for a while up till sometime, I think last year maybe.
It was December. It was one of the last things Biden did before he left the White House is he pulled back that bounty, the $10 million bounty on Ahmed al-Sharat's head.
He spent time at a black site somewhere.
Yep. It was near Basra, I believe, in Iraq.
So someone who, head of a terrorist organization, killing American soldiers, coordinating with other terrorist groups. This is now I don't know how long from then until now he is welcomed as the president of Syria. He's welcomed into the White House.
Yes.
I went to the Arabian Gulf. I was never in combat. I can't believe that that's accepted. Whatever works for geopolitics for, I don't know what, foreign policy establishment, whatever works for, I don't know what you call it.
And it's bizarre because, I mean, it's something, it's like there's potentially Israel connections, but at the same time, as soon as Ahmed al-Sharat came into power, that next day, Israel sent airstrikes into Syria and blew up every single air defense battery and every single weapons depot that was in the country the following day. They don't trust this guy.
Yeah.
But I guess they prefer this to what's his face, Bashar al-Assad.
Yeah.
I don't know. This entire thing is an absolute catastrophe, and we still, to this day, we still have boots on the ground in Syria right now. That Al-Tanf base that's along the Iraqi, Jordan, and Syria triangle border. It's right there. It's actually a good point to defend the guard. So to come back to that, 2 Iowa National Guardsmen were killed in December of last year, patrolling those streets. And Ahmed al-Sharat is just like, oh, I'm so sorry that this happened. And it's like they tried to blame ISIS, but it's like, who really knows? It could be the actual Al-Qaeda psychos, because after another thing, it's like Ahmed al-Sharat came into power and they were up there. The Druze is like one of the smaller minority groups that's in like southern Syria along the Jordan border. And the day after they came into power, they were chopping those guys' heads off. Nothing has changed, and they're fighting the Kurds as well. Like there was a conflict was a month ago up in northeast Syria. The sitting president of Syria was attacking the Kurds up in northeast, and in that process, accidentally blew open a prison that released a bunch of former ISIS guys. So it's like our allies are fighting our allies and releasing the psychos. So what are we even doing here?
Yeah. Yeah, what are we doing? And so that AMF has opened up this has allowed all of this to transpire over the past 25 years now and going. I don't know if there was a repeal even in committee.
It's been tried. I don't think the 2002 one has made progress in the past. Like that was one that would pass the chamber or another chamber. This one I don't think has ever made it out of a committee. I think they consider it too valuable to have this open-ended. Basically blank check to the president to do whatever they want. And obviously it doesn't matter who's in the White House, because like Obama's responsible for the initial stuff in Syria. He's responsible for the destabilization of Libya. He was happy to bomb Somalia, and now under Trump it's like Yemen, Sudan, more Somalia, some more Syria, and of course Iran now.
Yeah. And the role, defend the guard, the state, the National Guard, Army and Air. I was Air for 13 years. We have, depending on the unit, your mission, you are actively, you're playing a role with the active duty units. You are in rotations constantly. Depends on the unit, what you do, what your role is. And so you're vital to the overall mission overseas. And these National Guard troops, you join, you want to serve your country, you want to get an education, tuition, bonus. It's an opportunity. It's a social mobility ladder. But then you get sent overseas for these missions. So those 2 Iowa National Guards troops, I don't know what they were doing. I don't know the details of it. But that brings the question, why were they there? Not what happened on the ground, who's responsible for this, but why are they there? Under the AUMF for what? And those are the questions parents want to know.
Yes.
Family wants to know. Community members, why were they sent? Why were you sent? For me, it was only Iran. It was not a combat thing. But now considering if anything gets out of control, not to say it isn't already out of control, but let's say it stepped up a notch, any of the bases I was at, there are National Guard troops there right now that Iran could hit with ballistic missiles.
Yep.
and that's a lot of people. That's a lot of U.S. soldiers that are in harm's way over what?
It's about posturing. It's about saving face. It's about doing favors for other foreign nations, of course, or bailing them out of bad decisions that they committed us to. To keep picking on Israel, like it seems to me like they remind me a lot of like a little brother that like picks a fight with like a guy in high school or something, like somebody that's 2 grades older, and then we're the bigger brother that has to come in, keep bailing him out of fights. That's when it was June of last year when they were airstriking Iran, and then Iran was shooting missiles back at them, and then we had to intervene. I felt like that was exactly that analogy. Like we had to bail them out of a mistake that they made.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, Trump was even saying, like, he was cursing them out, like, live on TV. They don't know what the F they're doing. And I was like, oh, that's good. You know, tell them to cut it out. And then, but here we are. Like, we have, from what I understand, aircraft carriers heading back to the Persian Gulf right now and posturing, again, the same way we postured before Venezuela. Like, just you know, putting those forces out there. It's like, oh, we're just here to keep the peace. We're here to monitor things. We're here to enforce sanctions or whatever it may be.
The Cost of War project from Brown University is the Watson Institute. Between 2001 to 2021, between 8 and 8.5 trillion has been spent on warring. Not all for the global war on terror, but that is the Pentagon's budget, all the contracts, everything associated with military that's been spent in this regard. Supposedly, whether it's for national security or our interests, but defending us at home based on the AUMF, as you can go back or you can look it up online. It's easy to read and find the text. But that's 7,000 dead soldiers between the conflicts, 53,000 wounded. We just broke 30,000 veterans who have committed suicide now, far surpassing the amount killed. Contractors became a large role because it kept casualty numbers down. 7.9 thousand contractors, and they don't get veterans benefits. They serve. They don't have the uniform. They don't have any of that, but they also put themselves on the line for whatever reason. It is a job. Sometimes it's a well-paying job, but still, it's no different than somebody in uniform doing the same purpose under different leadership, private hands where the government doesn't want to get their hands seen. Black sites, anything else, but that's
just mentioning our side. That's not talking about the potential 500,000 Iraqis. I've heard upwards of that.
Between primary and secondary deaths related to the war, 4.5 to 4.7 million are considered dead in these countries. To destabilize what it does, toppling Libya, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan was rather light comparatively. Somalia, Yemen, 37 million refugees. So when you talk about the refugee crisis in Europe, how many were coming out of the Middle East? How many were coming out of I say Near East, but how many were coming out of Libya after you destabilized a region? Just the amount of death and destruction brought to these people over what? And you have clips of heads of state saying why they went after Gaddafi in 2011, why they went after. I mean, to your point of Osama bin Laden, 6 months later, he's not even in the country. When there's a clip of President Bush at the time saying, "We don't need him. He's off. He can't do anything now." And this is 6 months later. And this is 2002, and there's still it went on for another almost 20 years. And it's like he's not important. We're after other things. At that time, I don't know what the other things were because the Taliban were also just considered to be with Al Qaeda, which is just group them all under terrorists, and we could fight them and have this war, this prolonged war.
Like the same group that we had armed a couple decades prior and taught them how to fight like modern war against the Russians. The exact same people. And they're battle hardened and they know how to fight against a more powerful enemy. And we're just like, oh, this will be sorted out on its own.
It's not for nothing. I forgot if I saw a clip of it. It was like a joke meme. They weren't called memes at the time, but adopt a mujahideen. Mujahideen. Right? Those are the people fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan. for which bin Laden played a very small role.
Yep.
Also, he is from Saudi Arabia. He has almost nothing to do with Afghanistan except it was an opportunity. I don't know why he was in Afghanistan. I forget now.
The Taliban was looking out for him, more or less. He did have a partnership with them. That was my understanding. Okay. But to bring up the Saudi thing, it's like was it 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi,
Right.
And then we ended up invading Iraq because the Saudis are our allies, and they're also another liability. They're the ones that. There's a quote from Trump that we pivoted from bombing Al-Qaeda in Yemen to bombing the Houthis in Yemen to quote unquote placate the Saudis. That was the entire reason we changed targets, because the Saudis were more friendly with Al-Qaeda than they were with the Houthis. So that's the entire reason we pivoted. The Houthis did not bomb the USS Cole, and the Houthis did not attack us on 9/11. No. And a lot of the attacks that they did, that everybody's like, oh, well, they're attacking our tankers as they move through the Strait of Hormuz. And it's like, well, they didn't do that until we started helping the Saudis blow them to hell. It was mostly backlash, or blowback, as the CIA would call it.
In 2013, 2014, I think Lloyd Austin was Secretary of Defense under the last Biden administration. Mm-hmm. He was Central Command. Was he the commander?
CENTCOM, yeah.
But Houthis were the allies at that point in time.
Yep.
Fast forward, they are now the enemies, and he has switched. Alliances change. There's a friend-enemy distinction that goes on, that you can be friends one day. It's gang warfare.
Yes. It really depends on what kind of pressure comes from the embassies, depending on which ally of ours. Just like, well, I know you guys are really mad at these Al-Qaeda folks, but they're helping us out with this other internal struggle that we're having with our neighbor, and then we'll pivot. It's like, well, they'll slide us a couple $1 million, like, under the. They'll give us, technically they're giving us our own money back, because of like the amount of foreign money that we send to these in foreign aid to all these allied countries, and they just like give it back to us either through campaign donations or dark paths, who the hell knows. But
yeah. And so we hear these narratives every time before we invade this country or performing these strikes. We are protecting national security. We're protecting and promoting U.S. interests. We are degrading, disrupting, or destroying terrorists. We are sustaining the rules-based international order. I think I mostly hear that for Ukraine, Russia. We are ensuring a free and open, name the country. We are spreading democracy. We are protecting freedom, or WMDs. And so I would just say you would hear that in corporate media, but how many people are paid in independent media that are boosted, have corporate ties, big money behind them? But you hear this, and it just changes. And how fast we just shifted from Venezuela back to Iran to, I don't know who it was before that. And then, but there's still Russia, Ukraine in the background. But you always hear this, and you can go back. You could inundate yourself with the narrative in the media going back before every intervention that we've taken part in. And at the end of all of it, it was for those people, pretty much, it was always for the people of that country. And I just listed the 37 million refugees from our global war on terror. The amount of people, the war is against the people in that country. We might say it's against the head, because we might get rid of the heads of state, the regime, whatever you call it, the dictator. But the people are going to suffer all the bombing and the economic destruction, the instability, the fleeing from their home. And so after each one of those things, how much better off are the people of Libya or Syria or Iraq, Afghanistan? And every time you hear we're promoting democracy, we're here for humanitarian intervention, and it's just, they're dropped.
Yes.
They're dropped as soon as the war is gone. You don't hear about it.
Yep.
And so they're still talking about valuing Ukrainians, but at some point I imagine that's going to just drop off when the war ends.
Yep.
It's not necessary. It's not important. We moved on to something else.
It's like with the Ukraine thing in particular, it hasn't been directly traced back to us, but there was a democratically elected Yanukovych was the last before there was a massive coup that was largely funded by European and other NGOs that went in there, and they basically fomented this massive revolution in 2014. And that guy ran into exile, and was kind of the tipping point that brought this entire conflict into existence. And our hands aren't clean. Neither are other European countries, and they try to make it sound like it was organic, but if you trace any of the money or any of the organizations that were operating in that country right up until that revolution, it it's obvious it wasn't homegrown.
Yeah.
And how many Ukrainians are now dead? Russian conscripts dead. For what?
The money and organizing behind these color revolutions that just pop up somewhere, and then they get the media spotlight here. There's like it should be a warning if the media is focusing almost it's a coordinated messaging, same words around something in some place about humanitarian intervention. They're going to use this to justify for something and see where it goes.
Yep.
An opportunity. To your point of going to war powers, not war powers resolution, but AUMF for the Korean War, that was considered, there was about 50,000 U.S. Troops were killed in the Korean conflict. That was a 3-year war in 50 to 53 against North Korea and the Chinese army. I think they were involved.
Yes.
More so towards the later end of the war.
Once we pushed them back to the Chinese border, the Chinese got heavily involved.
But that President Truman at the time, it was a police action.
Yes.
Police action. 50 full-scale warfare.
Yep.
Against North Korea and the Chinese and Soviet. I'm assuming there was some Soviet assets there
Wouldn't
too.
doubt it.
And what makes this distinct is because FDR was the last to ask Congress for a declaration of war against Bulgaria. I think was the last one, but especially against Japan because it was the thing you have to do. You declare war.
Yes.
And the consideration, the landmark 1952 Supreme Court decision, Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company, there was a strike going on at this plant, and Truman wanted to break the strike, and it was considered unconstitutional. The Supreme Court ruled against it because, again, the U.S. was not at war. You didn't declare war. You're not. Declaring war brings on a whole change of the economy. There's all certain things that get in place. It's not just a declaration on paper. Institutional changes happen. But if you are at war, which we are consistently, I mean, the amount of money and troops that are sent to these things ongoing, I don't know how this isn't a war, but there's all kinds of legalities that Congress would rather not have their hands tied to.
And there's also like UN ramifications, like part of the treaties and charters there.
A war is an act of aggression. So for the same that everybody will say that Russia did, which they did do, is a war crime. Putin's a war criminal. But for the same thing, it's almost the same language that could be used for invading Iraq.
I think it absolutely could be.
It's practically the same thing, but because we didn't declare war, and since World War II ended and the UN creation of the UN, countries do not declare war anymore because there is international legalities that will hinder that country and the reputation of that country going forward.
It's like as a constitutional conservative, I come from the perspective it's like I don't really care what the UN wants. We should bare minimum be following what our Constitution says, right? Like if the UN obligated us to move into conflict, I would say no. I would say we have to follow the Constitution. I don't care what the UN wants. And that was actually I think it was H.W. Bush said that he didn't care if he got an AUMF to go into Iraq the first time. He was going to follow it with NATO and the UN into Iraq, regardless of what the Congress did.
We didn't invade until March of 2003. In 2002, the orders were already in. They were already moving troops. It was already set. They were just going to, I don't know how to characterize. They were already planning it. They were already moving all the assets, setting this up for the invasion. And just
I mean, I was talking about the first Gulf War.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah, that was H.W. There was a quote from H.W. where he says that I don't care what Congress says.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, at least W. Bush did get an AUMF. He got two, which is a lot better than what his father was willing to do.
We don't have conscription today.
No.
For this interview, I had to look it up. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts challenged the constitutionality of the war. It passed a law stating that no resident of Massachusetts shall be required to serve in the military abroad if the armed hostility has not been declared a war by Congress. This is 1970, Vietnam. The Attorney General of Massachusetts asked the Supreme Court to hear its case to test the legality of Vietnam War, and we come across the Supreme Court declined to hear the case due to lack of jurisdiction. They will not weigh in on foreign matters. When it comes to national security for U.S. foreign policy, they will not weigh in. That comes in for protecting citizens outside the U.S. from drone strikes or being terrorized by whatever the U.S. foreign policy is in that state. But for this, they will not weigh in, and I just thought, because Defend the Guard here is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
We do. I mean, I would love to see this get challenged. I think that we need to do it. Someone's got to be the first state, and as soon as we get that, then we can probably try to get the. I would love the Supreme Court to rule that that Congress has abdicated its responsibility. They've basically handed this power over to the executive branch without going through the proper process of a constitutional amendment. For example, the president can't confirm his own SCOTUS justices. The judges aren't supposed to write laws, and that if they were to just rearrange and allow these different branches to do whatever they want, despite what the Constitution says and the powers that are delegated to these very random branches, you need to go through the amendment process, and it needs to be ratified by 3/4 of the states, and that has not happened when it comes to war powers.
And this is a bipartisan issue.
I agree. Yes, it absolutely is. Yes.
I have to bring this up. I sent you the link to Shaheen's interview with Senator Coons, because Senator Shaheen's been there for a while. Dasha Burns from Politico interviewed her at a NAMO summit after the Iranian strikes on Iran last year, and she was saying she had been talking to people about, Congress hasn't declared war. This seems unconstitutional. Mentioned Trump voters who want no new wars, that Congress has over the last several administrations increasingly ceded war powers to the executive branch. What do you say to that, and how do you want us to change it? And this is where Shaheen laughs, nods, and turns to Senator Coons to answer. And he talks about like Vietnam and conscription and totally dodges the question whatsoever, because it's not considered necessary to declare war. They think AUMF suffices, but we're at war. There's no declaration of war. It's in our Constitution.
It's flabbergasting, and they're, like I said, they're more than happy to pass the buck, and they'll just like point at Trump all day. But it's their responsibility, and they're the ones that are supposed to, at bare minimum, they could put these votes forward to basically say. It was like with the Venezuela one, they did put a vote forward saying you're not allowed to escalate this. And that is something they need to do more of.
And some of them are opposed to the sunset clause. So that just times out. It just times out. Why can't this just time out and you have to vote on it to keep it going? It's just an endless open thing where the executive branch gets to do this. And Congress, well, lobbying, there's big money.
You'd think that the AUMF that says we're going after Osama bin Laden, once he's dead, you'd think it would sunset itself, but that's not the case.
So what Defend the Guard is asking is that at least declare war against whoever it is. And let me remind you, I want to declare war against whoever it is that we have to go to war with. Move it into a wartime economy, because we're already, we're asking for 1.5 trillion. I don't think it's official asking yet, but we're now 1.5 trillion, astronomical numbers. It's hard for me to comprehend. For what? For something upcoming? Declare war and use the National Guard. Defend the Guard, if it passes, well.
That's right. So I do have to admit, we did amend it, so it's a little weaker than it was before.
It's four.
Yes. Now, so because we're such a small state and everyone is the same threat that they give in every single state is we're going to cut funding. They never say we're going to cut funding. It always says we're going to put funding at risk. And I thought that was something that there was just like a quirk that our adjutant general in New Hampshire had, that he just always phrased it diplomatically like that. But I've listened to state after state after state, and these adjutant generals get up there and they use that exact same phrase. It puts funding at risk, because the Department of War doesn't make its own budget. Its budget is decided by Congress, and Congressman Massey, Congressman Paul Gosar from Arizona, Senator Rand Paul, when asked specifically about Defend the Guard and specifically about this funding threat, they go, no, funding is decided by Congress, and the National Guard Bureau can bluster all they want, but we decide how the states get funded and which guards get funded. But my certainty and those quotes are not satisfactory enough to a lot of the people up in Concord. So I have amended it. It now will not go into effect until 4 other states also pass it. And thankfully, there are much bigger states like Arizona that are looking into passing it. It's it's going to pass the Senate chamber again next week, I think, out of there. It's passed, the Virginia State House. It failed in the Senate over there, but we're making inroads. But I think what will end up happening is like if other states think similarly, we can all just kind of jump off together, because there's no way in hell they can justifiably defund 1/10 of the states. Like all of our guards altogether. That's absolutely impossible. Yeah. I think it's impossible that they would defund 1. It's certainly impossible that they would defund 5. And then it'll be like a lot of other things, whether it's like gay marriage or constitutional carry or cannabis legalization or whatever. Once like 1 or 2 states do it, it'll be like an avalanche, and a bunch will come to follow.
Okay. And I think 30 states have at least introduced it now?
Absolutely. Yep. And Massachusetts, I think, did it for the first time last year. I thought that was surprising. I didn't think that was going to happen.
And so it's an asking for declaring that the Congress declares war.
Yes.
The President asks Congress for declaration of war. Congress passes it. If not, then National Guard troops from that state, the state governor at that time, will not authorize those troops under Title 10 to be sent into combat zones. Sent only into combat zones.
Correct.
Unless there's a declaration of war.
Correct.
If we're at war.
Yes.
If people remember Korea, Vietnam, right?
Gulf War.
Those were wars. Why were we there?
Yeah.
Why did we lose troops? Why did we kill so many people there? Why did we do that to those countries? And every little war, smaller war since then, up to Iraq again, Afghanistan, and all the other things, a declaration of war if we're at war. But we're talking big money, lots of money, arms manufacturing, lobbying, everything that comes with the logistics, moving these things around, assets, anything tied. The F-35 program, 22, these are programs that corporations can get parts of, and you get big money contracts, and then you take some of that money and you push it up to representatives, and you can threaten them.
The F-35 is the epitome of how they can distribute the cost across the entire country so that no one representative will want to defund the program, because some factory that builds some part for the F-35 is in their district.
Yeah.
It has been distributed so widely. It is like perfectly engineered by the puppet masters in the military-industrial complex to make sure that that money keeps flowing.
Yeah, regardless of how good the F-35 is.
Yeah, or failed.
I say, like, regardless of whether it's a useful plane.
Exactly.
How much money is being dumped into it. I don't remember the last cost for that program.
It's astronomical, as you said.
But there's nothing more lucrative than getting your hands in a subsidy or getting a contract with the federal government to provide some service, regardless of how BS the service is.
Absolutely.
It goes back to Halliburton with Dick Cheney. Yep. Even though he resigned from the board,
I think so.
Stepped down.
Well, he's dead. But...
yeah. Well, I'm sorry. At the time, he stepped down to take the vice presidency, but he still did not own stocks.
Oh, of course.
Was he still not helping out his fellow board members? KBR, Halliburton, they were all over Iraq.
Yep.
I believe they were in Afghanistan.
I saw Halliburton trucks at Al-Assad Air Base.
Doing questionable things, moving things around, just collecting money, a lot of money. And there's been prosecutions. I didn't bring it with me for war profiteering, which is not a criminal activity anymore. You can profit all you want from these wars. It is just where the money is. We have 2 minutes left. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
So I don't know when this is going out, but this is going to have a Senate hearing on the 17th of February.
Okay.
They're going to vote on it after that. So even if this comes out after that, you can still contact your senators. Last time that this came through, it died in the Senate without so much as a roll call. They let it die with interim study, which is like death with dignity. And they had Lou D'Alessandro get up there, and he just gave like a 2-minute little spiel about it. This time we have a lot more allies in the Senate, I think, that are at bare minimum going to get some of these senators on record, but you should pressure them and be like, before you send our men and women downrange to potentially die in these forever wars, can we at least make sure that Congress does their job first? That's all we're asking.
That's it. Call your rep. Call your senator. Tell them about Defend the Guard.
Yes, please.
Tell your position.
Yeah, HB 104.
HB 104. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.